Look at that crowd.
They came again.
Yes, hello Today All Day family. Thanks for being with us on this Friday.
You know what you're doing. You're watching Today in 30. A lot of news that has developed since we last saw you, Ben.
We're going to start with the very latest on the terror attacks at the Kabul airport and what they mean for the urgent mission to evacuate Afghanistan.
And then Lester Holdy's got an exclusive interview with the Capitol police officer who fatally shot a rioter during the January 6th siege, why he has decided to come forward for the first time.
Then we're going to switch gears a bit and introduce you to 5 friends who turned into business partners. We're going to tell you about how they took a plunge into the water business.
Oh, neat. Also, if you're stumped on what to make your family for dinner this weekend, look no further. We got Jada. Jada De Laurentiis is here with a great recipe to satisfy every single member of your family. So let's push play on this Friday edition of Today in 30. Evacuation flights out of Kabul resumed overnight just hours after 2 suicide bombers targeted the airport, killing more than 100 people, including 13 U.S. service members.
In the meantime, the U.S. is bracing for more violence in the region. The head of U.S. Central Command saying they expect the attacks to continue ahead of Tuesday's withdrawal deadline. We want to get it started this morning with NBC's Richard Engel. Richard, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah. The United States is wrapping up its longest war in history, the 20-year mission in Afghanistan. But now the U.S. is withdrawing under fire, not from the Taliban, but from ISIS. And U.S. military officials worry the extremists will continue to target Americans or try to target Americans until they leave.
This morning, the planes in Kabul are flying, but the evacuation that has already taken out more than 100,000 U.S. citizens, Afghan contractors, and asylum seekers now has greater urgency and even more heightened security concerns that ISIS could try to shoot down a flight or carry out another attack.
We believe it is their desire to continue those attacks, and we expect those attacks to continue. And we're doing everything we can to be prepared for those attacks.
In Kabul, medical officials keep raising the death toll to at least 100 killed and dozens injured from 2 bombings, one at a crowded airport gate, another close by at a hotel used as a gathering point to go into Kabul airport. As Marines were doing pat-downs at the gate, checking for bombs, an evacuee was wearing one and detonated it, killing at least 13 service members, most of them Marines. Amid the explosions, gunmen opened fire. The U.S. is increasingly reliant on the Taliban for security. Our former enemies are pre-screening and patting down evacuees before they arrived at the U.S. manned gates. But this time, the new and unlikely cooperation broke down.
Clearly, if they were able to get up to the Marines at the screening, at the entry point of the base, there's a failure somewhere.
ISIS-K, the ISIS offshoot in Afghanistan and Pakistan, claimed responsibility. ISIS is the enemy of both the U.S. and the Taliban, and now both sides are mutually interested in fighting them. When U.S. troops pulled out of combat bases in Afghanistan, including Bagram, triggering the collapse of the Afghan army, the Taliban made lightning advances. Prisoners broke out of unguarded jails, and thousands of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other extremists escaped. They have been on the loose for nearly 2 weeks. And they'd like nothing more than to seek their revenge by attacking the Americans as they leave, kicking them when they're down, firing on Americans as they leave Afghanistan in defeat.
The Taliban have set up even more checkpoints around the airport this morning, keeping crowds still further back. It means if you are an Afghan in Kabul right now, it is extremely difficult to reach the airport. Unless you have a bus, a special permission from the Taliban, the window has probably closed to get to the airport and get out. Savannah?
Joining us now, retired Admiral James Stavridis, who served as NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, overseeing its mission in Afghanistan from 2009 to 2013, and John Brennan, who served as CIA Director during the Obama administration, both NBC News security analysts. Gentlemen, good morning to you. Admiral, I keep thinking about the troops who woke up this morning in Afghanistan and went back under extraordinary circumstances, a danger that really can't be mitigated. How do you keep U.S. troops and Afghan allies safe in a situation like this?
Let's start by thinking about those 13 families who are waking up undoubtedly to the worst day of their lives. I know it was a bad day for the president. It was a terrible day for those families. Savannah, there's no good solution here. And as I said a couple of times over the past few weeks, we are one truck bomb, one C-17 shoot down, one shootout at the KIA corral away from this mission going sideways. We can still pull this thing off. It's going to require total focus, doing everything we can to push the perimeter out, cooperating with the Taliban to do so, mitigating every conceivable threat, particularly threats against aircraft. Let's get this thing done by the 31st and step away.
Director Brennan, the Taliban, as mentioned, is providing the first layer of security, which is just stunning to even contemplate that that's the situation we're in, to rely on the Taliban for American security. But what options do we have? What leverage do we have with the Taliban to say, step it up?
Well, Savannah, we have no alternative but to work closely with the Taliban. They control the area outside of that airport. And so therefore, we have to interact with them. We're not relying on them, but in terms of making sure that they're doing everything possible to prevent individuals who have a terrorist agenda from getting close to that airport. Again, this is something that I think we know that the Taliban is not an organization that we would naturally work with. And also, there is concern that ISIS-K, the group that carried out this attack, is composed of a lot of former Taliban members. And so, therefore, infiltrating the Taliban by the ISIS organization is something that I think we have to be very wary of.
Absolutely. And Admiral, I mean, how likely is it that we see another attack like this or worse in these coming days?
I think better than even. And Director Brennan knows this better than anybody. But these kind of attacks tend to go in waves. Think about 3 to 4 years ago, and you felt like every month you were seeing a spectacular ISIS attack somewhere around the world. That's the DNA of this group. It's quite horrific to contemplate that. I would say what we ought to be thinking about is what do we do going forward? As John Brennan said, we're going to have to work with the Taliban. Think World War II. We worked with Stalin in order to overcome the Nazis. This is not dissimilar. We've got to find ways to keep eyes on intelligence in Afghanistan. We've got to be able to go over the horizon and to conclude, as President Biden said, never forgive, never forget, echoing the Borgias. The other saying is revenge is a dish best eaten cold. Let's focus on getting out of KIA Airport. Job next is finding ISIS-K and putting them at the bottom of the Indian Ocean alongside bin Laden.
Well, that leads me exactly to where I wanted to head with the former CIA director among us, John Brennan. I mean, the president said we won't forgive or forget. We will retaliate. In practical terms, what could that mean?
Well, we still have some intelligence assets that we can use in terms of overhead collection capabilities. I know that U.S. intelligence officers continue to run sources inside of Afghanistan. And so what we're trying to do now, I'm certain, is to understand where the ISIS leadership resides, where these operatives are, to take the actions that are necessary to prevent a follow-on attack, but also to get to the heart of that organization. And this is something that I know that President Biden is determined to do. We have a clock that is ticking down to the 31st of August. I do believe that President Biden will stay focused on that departure date. But between now and then, there is an enormous challenge. It's a very, very dangerous security environment. But the U.S. military, U.S. intelligence, and others, I think, are going to do their absolute best to prevent any more loss of life on the part of U.S. Military or civilian personnel.
And a final word from you, Admiral, in the moments we have left. As you know, the administration is under fierce criticism from Democrats and Republicans alike for the execution and the handling of this withdrawal. They say, the administration says, in essence, it was never going to be pretty. Chaos was, in some sense, inevitable when you withdraw from Afghanistan. But couldn't it have gone better than this? Haven't there been pretty egregious mistakes made here?
It certainly could have gone better. And I think we need to pull that apart and figure it out. And there's blame all the way around here, from the collapse of the Afghan military, which the U.S. military, and I count myself in that number, trained. We're not perfect intelligence. There never is. The Taliban stepped up in war. The enemy gets a vote. They perform superbly, frankly. We're going to pull all that apart, Savannah. Job one right now is to get out of this situation with all of the Americans and as many Afghans as we possibly can. The next job is going after ISIS-K, and I'm sure we're going to continue to work to get the remaining Afghan allies out. If we have to create an underground railroad to do so, we'll do it. We've got work to do in Afghanistan, but now is the time to leave tactically.
All right. Admiral Stavridis, former CIA Director Brennan, thank you very much. We're back with In Depth today, and this morning, some of the Capitol police officers who came under attack on January 6th are now taking legal action. 7
officers filed a lawsuit Thursday against former President Trump, his allies, and members of extremist groups, saying they sent that mob of rioters to disrupt the day's peaceful transition of power.
The terrifying moments that unfolded nearly 8 months ago scarred many officers who were there. Now a lieutenant, not part of that lawsuit, who fired a fatal shot at one of the protesters, is revealing himself and sharing his story for the very first time. NBC's Lester Holt sat down with him exclusively. Hey, Lester, good morning.
Good to see both of you. His name is Lieutenant Michael Byrd. It's a name that floated around the internet following the events on January 6, leading to some vicious threats, but officials never publicly formally identified him. Now the 28-year veteran of the force is coming forward, saying he wants to set the record straight about what took place. Were you afraid that day?
I was very afraid.
Are you afraid now? Going forward?
I am afraid because I know there's people that disagree with my actions on January the 6th. But I hope they understand I did my job. And there was imminent threats and danger to the members of Congress.
In the chaotic minutes before Lieutenant Michael Byrd shot and killed rioter Ashley Babbitt, a cascade of alarming messages crackled through his police radio.
He yells for help and, officer down and screaming as they're being assaulted.
This video from inside the House chamber captures Byrd instructing members of Congress to don gas masks.
We had a disbursement of tear gas in the rotunda.
Then, instructions to prepare for the worst.
I'd ask them to remove their pins, to remove their jackets, to look like staff as much as possible, and to seek shelter by staying down below their chairs.
Soon, a horde of demonstrators stormed up the stairs to the House chamber.
There's a gun! He's got a gun! He's got a gun!
Byrd is seen taking a defensive posture with his gun drawn.
I didn't even realize I had been yelling and screaming as loud as I was. Please stop, get back, stop.
We see your arm out there for a considerable amount of time. Yes. Were you wavering?
I was, again, taking a tactical stance. You're ultimately hoping that your commands will be complied with, and unfortunately they were not.
What did you think this individual was doing at that moment?
She was posing a threat to the United States House of Representatives.
But an attorney for Ashley Babbitt's family disputes that. He did not respond to our request for a comment, but in a previous statement said Babbitt was not brandishing a weapon, not in close proximity to members of Congress, and was not an imminent threat of death or serious injury to anyone.
Based on your training, in that case, does it matter that the person was armed or not?
According to law, it does not. I know based on my training and my policy, what I did was appropriate.
Multiple investigations have now upheld Byrd's actions on January 6th.
Have you continued to question your actions that day?
I knew that day. I followed my training, and I spent countless years preparing for such a moment. You ultimately hope that moment never occurs, but you prepare as best you can. I know that day I saved countless lives.
If Ashley Babbitt's family is watching this, is there anything you would say to them?
What I would like to say is to all the families from January the 6th, that their family members receive injury or loss of life. As my heart goes out to them, I'm sorry for their loss and what they're dealing with. And I pray that they find peace and comfort.
Well, Lester, as you know, one of the chief criticisms of Lieutenant Byrd from the beginning has been there were other officers in similar situations that day who did not fire their weapons. What, if anything, did he say about that?
No, I asked him directly about that, and he says he can't judge their actions or their circumstances. He believes he did what was appropriate. Anecdotally, I've heard from officers who have talked about the proximity in some of those situations was just so close that the idea of withdrawing a weapon and using it didn't seem like an option. But he says they'll have to speak for themselves.
Why did he decide to sit down? What was his motivation?
The threats had been mounting. He felt that his story wasn't getting out. There was a narrative that was making its way around the internet, and he thought it was time to come out and talk. And we should point out that he is, there are several investigations that are part of a deadly use of force, and they have all cleared him of wrongdoing.
Time now for our series Second Acts. Usually we bring you stories of people making a change later in life.
Yeah, this one's a little different. 5 friends who were just getting started down the career path when they decided to switch it up a little.
Now, they're proving it's never too early to try something new. And our good buddy, NBC News Now anchor Joe Fryer, got to sit down with them. Hey, Joe.
Hey there, good morning. Joe? Yeah, so these friends you're about to meet, they're young, and they're all pharmacists in their 20s and 30s. They've quickly become entrepreneurs, too. And they're not just dipping their toes in the water. They're making a splash, diving into the world of cactus water.
That's good. On the streets of Boston and New York, far from any desert, you'll find cacti that thrive in any climate.
Picture this, Joe. You're going to your local market on a Saturday morning, and you're greeted by one of us in a cactus. How could that not put a smile on your face?
These 5 close friends will admit it's not where they expected to be when they were training to become pharmacists, trading their white coats for green cactus costumes. But for Sarwang, Akash, Jay, Kwan, and Mo, this is exactly what it takes to promote their new product, Prickly, a brand of cactus water.
For those who ask, what is cactus water? How do you answer?
We actually use the puree of the prickly pear, which is the fruit that are found on top of the cacti.
Growing up in Lebanon, it was one of Mo's favorite drinks, made by his grandmother.
It tasted like a combination of watermelon and bubblegum. So believe me when I tell you, every time she made it for us, me and my siblings would fight for that last cup.
One day, he made some for his buddies.
That was sort of our cactus moment, if you will, because after just one sip, we knew we had something pretty special.
You call it your cactus moment?
Our cactus moment, that's right.
Yes.
Jay, I saw you laugh just a little bit when he described that it tastes like watermelon and bubblegum. Why is that?
Yeah, because the first time Mo brought it up, the first question you have is, cactuses have fruit? When we got over the fact that cactuses had fruit, he said it tasted like bubblegum watermelon. So we called him out on his bluff, and we lost that day. Definitely.
Yeah, they definitely did. So now they're all believers in Grandma's recipe. So
they're more than believers. They decided to start selling cactus water, launching Prickly in February, jumping into the crowded beverage market.
How does this go from, this water tastes good, to let's start a business?
You know, we had a passion for helping people. We met after pharmacy school in Boston, and we just hit it off right away.
Yeah, and I think we always had this passion for entrepreneurship, and everything else fell into place.
They call it an alternative to coconut water with less sugar and fewer calories, which appeals to them as health-conscious pharmacists. They understand the science part of the company. The business part was another story.
Did you actually Google how do you start a drink company?
You're already one step of the way.
Yeah. That's always the first step to any question.
It appears to have worked. They sold out of their first batch in 4 weeks, quickly went from producing 300 cases a quarter to 15,000 a month, helped by some creative marketing, which includes donning those cactus costumes.
We're those people in the middle of Times Square dancing around in these suits and giving cans of Prickly out to everybody. It's amazingly fun.
For these first-generation Americans, it's also an amazing example, inspiration for aspiring entrepreneurs.
I mean, take a look at us. We are the representation that the American dream is alive and well, because we're that textbook example of first-generation Americans whose family, sacrificed everything to give us an opportunity that they didn't have.
The lesson, they say, be resilient, just like a cactus.
As the saying goes, you are what you eat, and if you eat better, you feel better, which just so happens to be the name of the new cookbook by our friend Giada De Laurentiis. She stopped by recently to share her famous lemon chicken recipe that is part of her 3-day diet reboot to get your body back on track. Check it out. Hi, Giada. Okay, so a 3-day reboot is something I feel like I could do every Monday.
Yes.
You know, when you've overdone the takeout. But you say it's not really a detox. It's just to make you feel better.
No, because I think that when you think of a detox, you think of just like drinking smoothies or just having pure, just liquids,
Soup.
really.
Yeah.
This is an actual meal. I mean, this is on the reboot right here. We have a Amalfi lemon chicken, and we have a salad of bitter greens. So bitter greens just meaning things that are vegetables that have more of a bitter flavor to them are actually more detoxifying for the body. So here it's arugula, endive, and radicchio. So all things that you usually have and usually see in a regular Italian mixed salad.
You know what's
they
funny?
usually put those in there.
This book is interesting because I didn't expect this book from you. Because I look at you, Giada, and I think, she's healthy, she's got everything together, but there was actually something that triggered you to say, you know what, I actually need to step up my game a little.
I know. And you know what, Hoda? I think a lot of people have this misconception that if you are thin, then you're probably healthy. But that doesn't always go hand in hand, as we've now learned. And so I think for me, my issues were more, I had horrible, horrible sinus infections, like the kind where you're on antibiotics regularly. I never got off antibiotics for almost 2 years. And most of this started happening after I had Jade. So I was already in my late 30s. I traveled a ton. I worked a ton. And a lot of times people tell you, well, when you have children in preschool or young children, you tend to pick up a lot of stuff from them. But really, I started realizing I had not taken care of myself the way I should have for an extended amount of time. And I was just getting older, and it just I wasn't able to rebound. So I got sick a lot. And as I did that, it's this vicious cycle of being on antibiotics, which kind of breaks down your digestive system and your gut. And your gut, at the end of the day, rules your body. So once that was broken, it was a horrible cycle. And I kept trying to feed myself caffeine and sugar to keep my energy levels up, just so I could get through the day. And it would just destroy me. I mean, to the point where I couldn't, I'd have to take breaks from shooting, go home and take several days off because I couldn't even take a look at, I couldn't be in the sunlight.
Well,
my eyes hurt so much from the pressure.
Yeah, I think that this is a really smart, Hoda and I were talking about really being conscious of everything we put in our body. And let's start with this dish. Tell us about this lemon chicken.
So this is Amalfi lemon chicken. The whole idea here is to limit as much as possible your processed foods. And when I say processed foods, I even mean things like pasta and chicken broth, all the convenience foods that we end up buying to make our lives a lot easier. We got to really start to think about limiting them, at least for the 3 days, and cut out dairy, alcohol, caffeine if possible. If not, you can have an herbal, you can have a caffeinated tea.
Yeah, you should have seen our look when we
espresso.
said caffeine.
Yeah,
we'll try.
I know, and that's hard for me too. So I do have an espresso in the morning, but that's all I have. And no sugar, stuff like that. So this is just chicken, and you can do a whole chicken and have the butcher take out the backbone and the breastbone, or you can just buy pieces of chicken, whatever you like. I have thighs and breasts here. Skin on, rib on, because it'll have more flavor. And I season the chicken with rosemary, thyme, lemon zest, and salt. That's it.
How long
do you
how long do you cook that, Giada? We're kind of tight on time.
But I'm going to tell you something. You're going to cook it for 40 minutes, but you take the lemons that you zested, then you slice them like this. And then, as you can see, what I'm going to show you here is that you basically bake the chicken on top of the lemon.
Brilliant. Wow.
So it has so much more flavor.
That's a great idea.
When you're done.
And how long do you cook that, Giada?
About 40 to 45 minutes, depending on the thickness of the chicken.
And it turns out like that?
And it turns out,
look how gorgeous
that is. After you put it in, it turns out like the dish that was in front of us, but this is really what it looks like when it comes out of the baking sheet.
Beautiful.
See how it caramelizes the lemons?
I want it. I want it right now.
Well, we hope you're back with us for another big morning next week here on Today.
We do. We've got Padma Lakshmi. She'll be here. And we're also going to be treated to a concert by Keith Urban.
It's going to be a big week.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.